Welcome back to Vaping Unplugged. Today I will be talking with Peter Beckett from Clearing the Air. We talk about their newest investigation into claims that basically all consumer voices who submitted their voices to an EU consultation about higher taxes on nicotine products are fake. An NGO we never heard before claims that it's all bots and tobacco industry stooges. And Peter looked into it and turns out that is not the case. But nevertheless, this kind of claims are in media, Politico reported on it, other media outlets are reporting on it, and even the EU Commission takes it serious and considers not taking any of the submissions into their evaluation of the whole consultation. So it's quite an attack on a democratic process, which we are used to it. And Peter and me, we will talk about it, the actual results, what's behind them, who is this mysterious groups. So enjoy this episode and let us know what you think. Vape on. Hey, Peter, welcome back to Vaping Unplugged. Pleasure to have you here again. How are you doing?
Good. Always fun to be back with you guys, Michael. Hope you guys are good.
We are, especially now. It's good to talk to you because you caused some waves in the EU bubble last week with some research Clearing the Air did, and obviously that's why we wanted to talk to you. Maybe let's start with a quick overview. What happened? What did you do? And what should nicotine consumers be aware of?
It all started a couple of months before Christmas, where there was this story in a publication called Politico Health, which is a paid publication for EU policy nerds. You have to pay a stupid amount of money to get it. I do. I'm one of the suckers that pays for it. And the whole first section of this newsletter was about a study that was done by this organization called Impact Unfiltered, which I had never heard of before. And I have been in tobacco harm reduction advocacy for going on 13 years now. So there aren't that many people I haven't heard of. I'm reading it. It seems to be insinuating that there, because there are these 18,000 odd responses to the consultation, all of which talk about illicit trade and harm reduction, that all of these must be somehow linked to the tobacco industry. No formal definition of the link is given, but it's left insinuated. So I think, okay, who are these Impact Unfiltered people? I go online, I look at them, I look at their website. It's not a particularly helpful website. It's not a particularly well-designed website, if we're honest. There's not very much on it. And I don't see any press release about this. I don't see any actual study that they've done. And when I go on LinkedIn and I look for the people who are running this organization, they're not posting a link to their press release or to their study. They're posting a link to the Politico story. This raised a few red flags for me because this story is therefore apparently a Politico exclusive on a study that nobody else has any access to. So we thought a couple of things. First of all, let's go and look into who these people are and try and find out where they come from, what their genesis is. And then second, we want to recreate the study that they did to see if we come up with the same conclusions that they appear to have sold into Politico. And that's where it all started.
And probably we have to say and add, it's about the EU's tobacco tax. Consultation or initiative.
A consultation on the proposal by the Commission to massively increase taxes on all safer nicotine products, and indeed massively increase taxes on cigarettes, which, I don't really care about, but still interesting.
Yeah, and there were, 18,000 replies, I think, and they claim most of them are fake.
18,000 and change, the vast majority of which came from EU citizens. And, there were claims that because they used phrases like harm reduction, illicit trade, that these therefore must be linked to the tobacco industry. They don't prove any causal link. They just it's the worst type of equating correlation with causation. You know, the tobacco industry thinks this, these people are saying this, therefore these people must be the tobacco industry. As far as I can tell, there is no reasoning beyond that really quite obviously flawed logic. Another thing that they did, which also really annoyed me and got me interested in the first place, was they said in all of their communications, this is Impact Unfiltered, said all of the consultation responses, or not all, but 90% of them were anonymous, and somebody must be trying to hide their identity. Now, this immediately struck a nerve with me, because I know how EU consultations are filled in. You give your name, you give your email address, you have to set up an EU login account. It's a really cumbersome, not very good system. There is two-factor authentication, so the system actually verifies who you are. And then when you fill in your little online form to give your consultation response, you have to give your name, you have to give your location, you have to give your standing to reply to the consultation, then you write your comment. And at the bottom, there is a little checkbox that says, can we publish your name or not? And apparently a lot of people decided not to allow the Commission to publish their name, which is their right under the General Data Protection Regulation, which is European law. So these are not anonymous submissions. The Commission knows exactly who these people are. They have just elected to use their rights given to them under European data protection law, not to have their names published on the internet along with a consultation response. Now, Impact Unfiltered know this. And I know that they know it because they filled in a consultation response and they had to go through this process too. So it really just smacked of something that was, it seemed to me, borderline unethical, to be accusing people of intentionally hiding their identity when all they were doing was asserting their rights under European data protection law. So the rat is smelled at that point. And in the consumer community, we've got quite a few very nerdy tech types, one of which is a guy called Hans Molenaar, who is involved in a consumer organization called Acquoting, which is active in the Netherlands. He saw the same story I did, and saw all the same holes in it he did. But the difference between me and Hans is Hans is very, very good at statistical modeling and Python. So he thought, right, well, let's actually take the data, scrape it from the Commission's website, run it through a few computational models, and see what we find. Away we go, and then we end up with the study, the details of which I'm sure we'll get into, and it's been a really successful and really interesting exercise for us.
Yeah, and I mean, just this anonymity claim, I can confirm. I got a new phone and forgot, obviously, to transfer this one EU login. You even need a separate app to get in there. And now it's impossible for me to log in again because I don't have the old phone anymore. So it's not like every random chatbot.
I've had exactly the same problem. You have to go through the Commission's help desk. They take days and days to respond to you. It's an absolute nightmare. This is the account that is required of all citizens to fill in any consultation that the EU does. Now, far from these being anonymous people who genuinely didn't believe what they were saying, these are 18,000 people who have wrestled with this appalling IC system in order to make their voice heard. If you ask me, that tells you the opposite of what Impact Unfiltered are trying to say. It's really, really underhanded what they're doing.
Yeah, and for sure, the story about this should be how hard the EU Commission makes the democratic participation for citizens, because it's insane how hard this is and how many steps it requires to just raise your voice and tell them your opinion about something, and then turning around, taking a random, I don't even want to call it study, but claim, and fully go with it and say, oh, this is all fake, we shouldn't do that, we shouldn't consider this consultation at all, is quite striking to me. And it seems like nobody really cares. Also, all these groups, the civil society groups who always claim to fight for democracy and citizen participation, there is striking silence in this part of Brussels.
So let's look into that statement for a second because it's really interesting. This organization, Impact Unfiltered, and at some point I would like to get into the genesis of this organization because it also tells us something.
No, actually, let's do that because that's interesting. Let's start with that, who they are, and then we go what you actually found out. But who are those people?
It all starts at Bloomberg, as everything seems to. And one of his many tentacles, if you want to understand how Bloomberg's tentacles, I thoroughly recommend that your listeners read David Zarek's investigation on the firebreak. Maybe you can provide a link in the show notes to that. It's a great investigation of how Mike Bloomberg's tobacco control operation works. Part funded this organization called the School for Moral Ambition. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I was dating somebody who said they went to the School for Moral Ambition, I'd probably like turn tail and run. Talk about the ick, right? But what they do is they take people who appear to be bored in their corporate middle management roles and put them through some sort of pseudo training course where they go and intern for worthy tobacco control organizations for 6 months. It all feels very cult-like. David Zarek, again, has done a wonderful piece on the School for Moral Ambition on the firebreak, which you should go check out and which you should put in the show notes. And the output of that is partly this new organization called Impact Unfiltered, which has been co-founded by two former, they're called alumni of the School of Moral Ambition, at least one of whom interned for Vital Strategies, which is one of Bloomberg's big giving arms. The other guy, so the first co-founders appears to have had a sort of middle management job in logistics that he got bored with. And the second one is a sort of venture capital type who has an interest in psychedelics, which seemed a little odd to me. In any event, they put together this organization, and I read on their website, it doesn't seem to have its own legal entity. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Clearing the Air doesn't have its own legal entity. Seems to be based at the School of Moral Ambition. Its website says that it makes policy recommendations that rest on comprehensive research and data analysis of EU tobacco control gaps. Okay, their website doesn't have any research on it. So it's a little bit unclear to me what it is they actually do, other than a little bit of web scraping and sending a press release to Politico. They've been financed through these two Dutch foundations. I don't know anything about those foundations. I can't really speak to them. But their work is now being amplified by this, their alumnus, the School for Moral Ambition. Now, the School for Moral Ambition is run by a very well-known left-wing economist called Rutger Bregman, who is famous for telling billionaires at Davos that they need to pay more tax, which I agree with him on. For what it's worth, and they seem to be churning out these new alumni to go and fight the good fight as they see it, and Impact Unfiltered is a manifestation of that.
Why now? I mean, you said it, I have never heard of them before. Why are they getting involved now in the tobacco tax debate on an EU level?
I think this is a little bit more sinister, them trying to find a use for Bloomberg's money, or these Dutch foundations' money. So one of the things that nicotine consumers have historically been very good at is responding in numbers to public consultations where people want to ban or tax them into oblivion. Now, this makes a lot of sense because, as a general rule, the people who engage on policy issues as consumers of something are people who are going to be directly affected. You can poll the general public on, should we ban vapes, and get 60% of them say yes, all you like. It doesn't matter because most of them don't vape and haven't experienced tobacco harm reduction. So when it comes down to it, they're going to shrug their shoulders either way. But there is a very active base of people who will be severely negatively impacted by this, including me, including you. And people like us get pissed off about it. And we do things like respond to consultations, and we do it in numbers, and there are quite a lot of us. And when a lot of people respond to a consultation, it makes it harder, though not impossible, for a public authority to ignore the general thrust of that consultation. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to create an atmosphere where the commission feel empowered to ignore consultations that get large levels of responses from nicotine users by spuriously casting them all as fake. Now, they can't prove that they're fake, but the commission is already saying in certain public utterances that it makes at conferences, oh, we're not sure that all of these responses are actually reflective of people's views. You've got absolutely no evidence upon which to base that statement. But they're saying it because we've got the next big tobacco consultation, probably dropping before the summer, the Tobacco Products Directive consultation. And they are warming themselves up either to not do it or to ignore the result of it, because the result of it is going to be a multiple of the level of engagement that the tax one got. And what Impact Unfiltered are doing is they are giving them a permission structure within which to ignore the voices of the many, many people who will try and make themselves heard. And also, in a funny sort of way, suppress those voices by making them think, oh, it's entirely pointless, so we won't even bother.
Yeah, and it's obviously, it sounds a bit like a conspiracy theory, but at the same time, the EU Commission is doing this better regulation initiative where I thought it's about getting rid of red tape and over-regulation for the economy. But as it turns out, one of the suggestions would be to scrap these public consultations generally, to have less democratic participation rights for citizens. So I think when all of this comes together, you are quite right. It looks like they want to avoid those public consultation for the really big regulatory step, the Tobacco Products Directive.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get away with that. I think they're going to try it, and I think they're going to fail because it would just be far too controversial for them not to.
I mean, let's hope so. But then let's get into it, actually. So
he will do is when 100,000 nicotine users say, don't ban the thing I use, they will say, oh, these are just, the mouthpieces of the tobacco industry, because, they're all saying the same thing. Now, before we go into the bigger stuff, let's just take a step back for a second. It is very much the case, as we've shown, the vast majority of these 18,000 responses were from citizens. A lot of them do sound the same, and a lot of them are the result of coordinated campaigning. There is nothing wrong with that. We looked at a couple of other consultations. We got 18,000 in this tobacco tax one. The one that pertained to corporate social responsibility reporting, that got, and I will just find you the number because it's in our piece. A consultation on the one that we looked at, the consultation on sustainable corporate governance. Now that got 473,461 responses on corporate reporting. That's kind of niche as well, right? But the interesting thing is there's only about 6,500 of those are unique responses. The vast majority of the rest were collected by a bunch of NGOs, Avars, Global Witness, Friends of the Earth, and so on, who ran big recruitment campaigns. That's a good thing. People in the policy space should be making the argument to the public about the change they want to see in the world, and then getting the public to engage with political authorities through mechanisms like consultation. There is nothing wrong with this. There is nothing wrong with it when Friends of the Earth do it. There is nothing wrong with it when Avars do it. And there is nothing wrong with it when a few vapors do it either. Now, we spoke to a Swedish organization that put a tool to help people write a consultation response. They'd have to copy paste into the system that we described earlier. And, they said, well, look, we're volunteers. We can't do this, particularly professionally, but we want to do something. And a lot of our members, they're not going to be able to write their own beautiful flowing prose to explain why they don't want to have to pay more for snus. They just don't want to have to pay more for snus. Now, I think people at the School for Moral Ambition would probably be okay with these kind of block responses to a consultation whose objectives they agree with, like, for example, corporate reporting. But
I assume there they didn't do a study.
I mean, funnily enough, nobody did a study on that. Chris Snowden, in his piece on The Critic, looked at a consultation that got 4.6 million responses, which was when they were talking about changing daylight savings time. Funnily enough, people respond to consultations when it affects them. And this isn't a bad thing. So if your whole shtick is moral ambition, it's not a very good look to be going around saying, oh, the views of citizens only matter when they agree with what I think.
Obviously, you're right. And I think that's why your piece and your work, which you and other helpers put into it, is so important, because it's always so easy to just say, oh, all fake. And that's why let's ignore it. And I'm fearing as well that we will see that again next year, probably, or this year, when we have the next consultation.
At the moment, I'm hearing consultation spring, legislative proposal end of the year, beginning next year.
So it will be a fun year.
Next year will be the fun year.
In light of all of this, then let's talk about it. What do you expect for this year? Probably Commission we can keep short, because we know it will be bad what comes out of the Commission. But from the other EU institutions and from a consumer's perspective, what will be the fight to fight?
There's a lot going on. I don't want to drown you in jargon, and there's always the risk that I do that in these kinds of questions. So there's a resolution going through the European Parliament at the moment that will be fought over, which is basically a theoretical resolution. Should safer nicotine products be regulated in the same way as cigarettes? Broadly left-right split. The left thinks yes, the right think no. There's a process going on in the Parliament at the same time, which will be an opinion on the aforementioned tax directive. Both of those are good opportunities for people to express themselves if they so wish. There'll be a consultation on revising the Tobacco Directive, I'm hearing in the spring, could get pushed to the summer. And then there'll be a lot of bureaucratic jiggery pokery, the likes of which I will not bore your listeners with, but that will end up most likely with a proposed Tobacco Products Directive being birthed either just before or just after Christmas. I would suggest that people get used to being angry, because certainly what we'll see come out of the Commission will be absolutely maddening. The commissioner himself has just gone full on vaccine denial, with his views on safer nicotine products being just as harmful as smoking, which he's now said in planned settings several times and written. And I thought it was an accident when he first said it, and it turns out, no, this is a coordinated campaign of disinformation from the European Commissioner for Public Health, Mini RFK Jr. So it'll be annoying, but venting our annoyance through the correct fora is good. We'll be there to cover it and tell people more or less where to go. And then in 2027, we're likely to get the big, angry parliamentary fight over this. I don't think now is the moment to go into the minute details of this. I think when we've got the file on the table, let's meet again and run through it all. But there's a lot to be done there.
Yep. And as you said, the initial drafts won't be good. So a lot of things to do. And I feel like I always say the same, but especially when it comes to EU, it's important for consumers to join consumer organizations who can help to navigate all of this, and obviously also following Clearing the Air, where you do not only investigative journalism, but also a lot of explaining of these processes. And I think that's why it's very important what you do.
Investigations. Really, this one's been really good. We're teeing up another one. I can't talk very much about it right now, but it'll be along similar lines to the one we've just done. And I think that certainly stay tuned for that and other similar such projects that we'll come out with over the next year or so.
We definitely will. So thank you, Peter, for joining us, explaining us the situation, and obviously even more for your work. Always a pleasure to have you here. See you soon again, hopefully.
Michael, enjoyed it.
Take care.